There we go. This means recording continue. Yes.
Recording in progress.
Oh, you got a bit of feedback there.
Yeah. There we go. I'll turn my
Rob,
volume.
there we go.
There we go.
There he is.
There he is.
We've just invited you to speak as well. We'll just give it a few moments. Obviously, anyone who would be interested in this sort of talk, please do just opt to do a little ping to them by simply pressing the plus sign in the bottom right corner. Have a look through your friends list of who you've got, and if someone there you think will benefit from this chat, just invite them along, because
it makes for
discussion. And today, well, we had a little bit of a chat actually, Adam and I, a couple of weeks ago. We were thinking about the different things that we could actually talk about on here, and you know, obviously we get into a little bit more, but we just thought about hypnosis as a whole. What is good for hypnosis? What could be bad for hypnosis? How do people portray things in different ways? And stage hypnosis creeped up, didn't it, Adam?
It did indeed, and I think it was based on the topic of using hypnosis outside of the therapy room, which we talked about last week. And it was that Little Britain sketch that came to mind, where you've got the character that starts using those techniques in car boot sales and things like that. And it's kind of like, well, what's the connotation of the wider public seeing some of these stereotypes and cliches and then thinking about that when they think of hypnosis and therefore hypnotherapy? And it just kind of sparked that kind of thought of, is stage hypnosis good or bad for the hypnotherapy profession? And who better to have that conversation with than two stage hypnotists joining us as co-hosts and moderators today. So welcome, Grant. Welcome, Rob. Great to have you up here on the stage with us.
Hello.
Great to be here and representing the stage.
We got stage hypnotists on a stage, so I'm nervous. Graham, I know you've done street hypnosis, and I've done a few classes and stuff, but never done it properly with an audience and things like that. And Rob, obviously you've been on my other podcast a few times, so this is something that's been bread and butter for you and Grant, and you've done it a lot. I guess just to kick things off, Rob, what do you think is the major perception that people have when they see a stage hypnotist? Do they have that fear of, I'm going to be controlled, I'm going to be made to do something they don't want to do? Is there a dominant perception that tends to come up time and time again?
I think that everybody seems to fall into a couple of different
categories. Might be on mute at the moment, Rob.
Oh, I was.
There we go. Is that
there? We go. Perfect.
Yeah, I think there's everyone falls into a couple of different categories. I think you've got the people who are just desperate to be hypnotized, and they're not frightened of anything, and they've got nothing but excitement in them, and they've wanted to do it their entire lives and they've just never had an opportunity to until now, or they've done it before a million times and they want to do it, and they'll never go and see a hypnosis show without volunteering. And then you've got the people who fall into that other category of being terrified, and they think, don't pick me, and there's all these misconceptions of, I don't want to be picked, I'm going to sit at the back and then you can't pick me, as if that's how it works. And then obviously you've got the people who fall in the middle of that, who either think that it's all nonsense and it's made up and everybody's acting. So I think there's a really mixed bag there. I think the majority of people in the UK certainly fall probably into the category of being terrified of it and please don't pick me. It's interesting being on tour and stuff, not now obviously, but when I was and when I am, it's interesting to talk to theatre management and staff during the day, and you get a real insight into the way that they see it and the kind of conversations they're having in the box office with people who go in to buy tickets and that kind of thing. So yeah, I think there's a real mixed bag, but I would say in the UK, certainly most people think it's scary, terrifying, don't pick me. They have that sort of mindset about it, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree with that as well, because we're very stubborn
people, aren't we, in the UK, to the point where it's also the point to where they just don't necessarily believe it. If I always say to many friends, if I went to America, I could make
millions, because Americans
experience so much stage hypnosis that they can literally just melt into hypnosis, whereas Brits, you really have to work in order to get that same effect, and you have to create the belief level on so many different areas as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
I'd love to do more stuff in the States than I have done. I've done a bit, but I'd love to do more shows in the States because it's such a more of an accepted thing over there. Whereas like, it's funny, if like, I've got loads of friends who are magicians and stuff, and if you having a magician at your wedding is like standard common practice in the UK. Like you don't go to that many weddings now that don't have a magician at them. Like it's the normal thing, almost as normal as having a band or a disco or whatever. But in the States, they've never heard of that. Having a magician at a wedding, that's just not a thing. It doesn't happen. You had a magician at your wedding. Why did you do that? But stage hypnotists are everywhere over there. And obviously there's only really a handful of us here.
Absolutely. Now Grant, obviously, I know you through stage hypnosis as well.
And I know you get utilised all around the country. So have you got anything to add on that?
Yeah, well, I mean,
going on to the different types of people that volunteer, I think the UK audiences,
because we're all cynics, because we have that, show me, then entertain me. I think that works in our favour. The amount of times people, and Rob will know this, the amount of times people that come up on stage that kind of like, I don't believe in this shit. It's not real. It's not going to work on me. But because they're so strong-minded for that, they end up being absolutely fantastic. So it's I think, British audiences, I think, are some of the best audiences. American audiences can be great, but I love that. I love that challenge of a person that is almost fighting the hypnosis a little bit. They're feeling the suggestion and you see it overtake them. I think for audiences watching that, rather than it being like, you're the world's greatest ballerina, click, and then off they go to be a ballerina, when they see the person struggle with the suggestion and they see it dissolve into them,
and then get overwhelmed by it,
it makes it feel more real and more tangible for the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Because when it comes to the actual, and I think you put it perfectly, to the fact that it's the audience, it's the people who are being hypnotized get hypnotized and they end up doing whatever it is. It's the audience who see Dave, who normally just sits doing XYZ sort of job, all of a sudden is doing this thing that he would never ever do, and it creates that absolute aura of disbelief, but yet belief at the same sort of magnitude and where it does. Now, obviously, Grant, I know you from when you do your stage shows, you do completely clean. Rob, you have a slightly different aura of shows as well. So how do you find that balance works?
I mean,
is that me?
yeah, I was going to say, well,
Freeva, yeah.
For me, I think it's weird because there's a lot of people that, I'm clean, super clean. However, there's a lot of people that slate adult material with stage hypnosis. The reality is adult stage hypnosis is incredibly funny, and that's not what gives stage hypnotist a bad name. That's not what gives hypnotist a bad name. If you're a great hypnotist, if you're a great performer, it doesn't matter what material you're doing, as long as it's at the right audience. No, Rob would not do adult content at a holiday park. I'd like to think he wouldn't. Do you know what I mean? And it's about marketing to the right audience. What I think is bad for stage hypnosis is shit hypnosis. If you've got someone that isn't an entertainer on stage, it's a dull show. People watching it go, that's dull, I'm not interested in it, and aren't going to see it as something they're going to go see for therapy.
Yeah, absolutely. Rob, obviously from you.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. I mean, the reason I do an adult show actually is primarily because that's my sense of humor. I've got a really twisted, warped sense of humor, and that tickles my sense of humor. And so for me, actually, a lot of the reason why the show has an adult warning on it is typically just actually I use bad language. The volunteers use bad language. I can't stop them from using bad language all that easily. I mean, you can make it funny, but typically I'm not going to bother. And so I at least want that in place. And truthfully, lots of people leave the show and going, actually, that was more tame than I thought it was going to be for the most part. And I think, I mean, I've come under attack from some really well-known, probably like one of the best known stage hypnotists in the world. Massively is trying to have me shut down, and I just don't, very publicly, and I just don't really believe in cancel culture. I've got this real thing about, we live in a world where there's 900 TV channels in the UK, probably more, I don't know how many there are, and if you don't like something, just change the channel, that's all right, as long as it doesn't have any damaging, dangerous effects. So then the argument comes down to, is doing adult routines on stage, is that dangerous, is that potentially damaging? A matter of opinion. Most people's opinion, I think, is not. There's a handful of people who think it does. And then it just comes down to your style. So like I obviously have to do clean shows sometimes. So if it's a corporate gig, it's very likely to be a clean show unless they're like a big room of mechanics or something who want it down and dirty. So I can do a clean show. I just don't get as much of a kick out of doing that as I do out of doing the adult show. But like I've seen Grant on stage a bunch of times, and it's awesome. So like it just comes down to what suits your personality naturally. I find it really hard not to swear on stage, and when I have to reel that in, that's really difficult. So yeah, I think it's that.
Now, obviously, one of the points of tonight is talking about stage hypnosis, whether it's a help or a hindrance to practitioners. I've got my views, which I'll share a little bit later. Adam, have you got anything that you want to push towards that direction first? Any questions or anything such like?
Yeah, I think there's two key points from my side. First of all is that it gets people thinking and perhaps talking about hypnosis that wouldn't have necessarily thought about that before. And there is a great convincer strategy. If you see people that you know doing things way out of their comfort zone on stage, then it creates a belief system that fascinating things are possible using this kind of mysterious process of hypnosis. The second way in which I think that stage hypnotism, other than convincing audiences of the power of hypnosis, really helps is that myself, I was inspired to become a hypnotherapist through stage hypnotism, through the early Paul McKenna TV shows. I think the first book I read on hypnotism was Ormond McGill, Introduction to Stage Hypnotism. And for me, doing the little things like magnetic fingers and, arm catalepsy and things like that, was a fascination of mine, which then, it didn't go down the stage hypnotism route. It went into clinical hypnotherapy. But I'm not sure I would be a clinical hypnotherapist now if it wasn't for some of those early experiences observing stage hypnotism, not just on TV or in books, but actually turning up and seeing the nervousness of my dad when the stage hypnotist on stage said, right, can you put your fingers together and lock them? He was terrified to do that because he knew how suggestible he was, turning up and then seeing people right next to me in an audience do these crazy things. That, I think, fueled a fascination. And I'm willing to bet lots of hypnotherapists probably had a similar experience to me, that were it not for stage hypnotism, they might not be clinical hypnotherapists now. So I think we've got a lot to be grateful for stage hypnotism. I guess the one counter argument of that, if I'm also playing devil's advocate, is that occasionally one of the biggest fears that I think some people have about clinical hypnotherapy is this idea of being controlled, that they're going to lose control. And I think stage hypnotism perhaps fuels that, because there is this kind of perception that the stage hypnotist is in control of the participants. And when they click their fingers, they'll sleep. And when they make a suggestion, they'll follow it. And there's a lot of things like social proof and compliance, and you weed out the people that aren't, following suggestions. But effectively, the audience doesn't know that. All they see is that when the stage hypnotist says something, people do it. So there is that counter argument of, well, maybe I'm going to lose control if I see a hypnotherapist. So that's my take on it. It'd be great to hear from the stage hypnotist on your thoughts, if you think it's good or bad for hypnotherapy as a profession. And also, if you're in the audience right now and you've got an opinion either way, is it good, is it bad, is it a help or a hindrance, did it inspire you? Raise your hand, we'll get you up on stage. It'd be great to hear your thoughts.
And as we always say to anyone who does wish to join us, it's a complete safe place to come up and have a chat and talk about these things. Like I say, I've got my views of exactly stage hypnosis because I started from the street background, which I'll get into a little bit more. Grant or Rob, have you got anything you wish to put on from there?
Yeah, I'd just like to say, and it's not an original point, it's a post I read from Bob Burns earlier, and it's absolutely right. When people come for hypnotherapy, it's not that they're worried about losing control. They've already lost control over some part of their life. That's where they're going to go and see a therapist. They want someone that's going to give them some control, to go in there, mess stuff up, straighten it back out again, and give that to them. I think what can often give hypnosis a bad name is there is a lot of hypnotherapists that are out there that don't necessarily test their hypnosis.
They're so worried about going,
this is going to happen. They lack that confidence, the intent that a stage hypnotist has. And that person comes, I mean, how many times have we heard it, especially on stage, Rob, when you get someone that goes, I don't know if I can be hypnotized. I went to see a guy to quit smoking a couple of years ago. I felt relaxed, but I don't know if I was hypnotized. So you can try and hypnotize me, but I don't think it'll work. And they go under and they're brilliant. So I think what gives hypnosis a bad name is hypnotherapists.
I mean,
we clarify that bad hypnotherapist, of which there are lots of.
Exactly. And I always think that it doesn't matter if you're a stage hypnotist, a street hypnotist, a hypnotherapist, however you use it, whether you're doing it on live streaming or whatever, you've got to have some kind of, some performance. Your therapy room is your stage. The way you set it up, the lights, the music, the sound, the smells, all of these are suggestions, and you've got to deliver that with intent, with confidence that it is going to work. So it's what gives hypnosis a bad rep is bad hypnosis. And on stage, if we drop the ball, if somebody doesn't go under, we explain that tonight's not your night. It's not that you can't be hypnotized. It's just tonight it's not right for you. Auntie Mavis, when she spends however much money to, eat chocolate and still lose weight, when she comes away, she's not only spent her money, doesn't know if she's hypnotized, but she's then going to tell all her friends as well, I tried that, doesn't really work. I don't believe in that type of stuff. So it needs stage hypnosis, performance hypnosis in theatres and venues to make people go, oh, what is this? If he can control those people to do all those crazy things, then surely it's going to help me be able to walk across the street and
not shit myself inside of a balloon.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Rob, have you got anything to go on the back of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think if I was up against a hypnotherapist who was really anti-stage hypnosis, I would win the debate with one sentence, and that is this. We did the maths not that long ago, and I've totted up over 2,000 shows now, and over 17 years. And when you look back at that, I can categorically tell you that I have never in my life done a show that went well, because obviously sometimes the show goes badly. Sometimes you just have a bad night. I've never, ever, ever done a bad show where somebody didn't come up, a good show where somebody didn't come up to me afterwards and say, can I hire you to help me stop smoking? Now I don't do it. It's not my things, but I'll say no, but I can refer you to somebody you can, or you can go online, look on Yellow Pages, go wherever you want to. Yellow Pages. I haven't said that for a while, but you can go and look wherever you want, and you'll find hypnotherapists who are good and reputable and have reviews and all the rest of it. And I think that's a massive sign that if somebody comes and watches me, frankly, make somebody gyrate against a chair on stage and do things that they wouldn't want their grandma to see them doing, or their grandkids to see them doing, and then still come up at the end and say, can you help me with my emotional eating problems? I think that really speaks to what Grant said about the fact that this proves that if you can make somebody do all these crazy things on stage, then you can definitely have this profound impact on my life. And I think if the hypnotherapists who are anti-stage were right, that just wouldn't happen. You'd have people who come, clap, laugh, leave, and then never think about it again. But I think the fact they come and ask the question, and they're not just being curious, they're actively trying to hire me. So if I did do that, it would be a whole extra bit to the business. I think that speaks volumes, really.
100%. And like I say, 2,000 shows in 17 years is clearly an accolade as well in itself to show that you're doing something which brings more people on as well. Now we've got a couple of people wishing to ask questions. Rowan, welcome up to the stage. Have you got a question?
Hi guys, it was actually just a point in that Grant covered it. It was Bob's post there the other day about the fact that people are out of control when they come to a hypnotist. So really, we're there to give them control back, I think. And off the back of working with Bob and mentoring Bob, I started implementing the hypnotic tests within my practice, and that just changed the game. It really did. And I think he mentioned, he puts it in a really nice way. He's like, if I can get you to forget your name, I can get you to forget about your problem. If I can stick your hand to the table, I can get this idea to stick in your mind. And I think doing these simple hypnotic tests, he's got this thing that he says, some will, some won't, so what? And it gives you this extra tool over and above any therapists that don't use the hypnotic tests within their practice. And the amount of guys that come to me now, and you ask them, have you done any of this with previous hypnotists you've been to? Because they've all been to other hypnotists, other therapists, and they don't do the tests. and you see that they're not really confident whether it can help them or not. And as soon as you do the test with them, they're like, whoa, yeah, something's happening here. And I think it creates a sort of once-in-a-lifetime experience. And anytime we have these once-in-a-lifetime experiences, we have a shutdown of the default mode network, and we're open to suggestion instantly. So I think the stage hypnosis, if it's done right, and you know what you said as well, the therapy room is our stage. You know, the whole of life.
Oh, muted a little bit earlier. Absolutely, I 100% agree with what you're saying there, Rowan. And one of the very smallest things for me as a therapist, when I'm doing therapy work, is if you're doing some sort of cleanse, if you're doing some sort of something that they want to get rid of, your final suggestion can be, and when you know you finally got rid of that X, Y, Z, whatever it is, you'll notice your eyes will become unlocked and you'll be able to open them, but not until you've got rid of it. And you'll see these people literally trying to move their eyes left, right, and Chelsea, and then all of a sudden they'll snap open and go, oh, that was weird. And again, it's just because of the suggestion of whatever you put in place. So yeah, thank you very much for sharing such things, but also other hypnotic skills as well could be utilized for that. Sally, welcome up. How have you got something to ask or a point to make?
I think it's already been made because I saw Bob Burns's post, and yeah, you know, other hypnotherapists have said to me that people are in hypnosis daily, and you know, they're in trance and they don't really realize it. I mean, for me, I've had a few comments about, will you make me cluck like a chicken? And I said, well, only if you want to. I can't make you do anything you don't want to do. So that was probably a question then for Grant and Rob. Is that actually the case in their experience for the stage hypnosis? How do they set that up with the people that take part?
How do you make them cluck like a chicken?
Not necessarily cluck like a chicken, but obviously they are there for an experience, and they're obviously up for doing that. So
I think, fundamentally, it's the people in the audience are either going to Rob said this earlier, they're either going to volunteer or they're not. You know, it's our jobs to convince them to go, oh, do you know what? I'll give this a try. And if they do it with an open mind, and we give them a profound experience, they're going to have a great night. But then there's the dual reality going on as well. As the experience of the people on stage is one thing, what the audience's experience and what they see is something else. So as a stage hypnotist, if we do something positive with hypnosis, you know, hundreds and thousands of people can see that and go, wow, that's amazing. Our one or two failures when someone doesn't go to the level that we want to, as professionals through our experience, we can guide them to get to that level. And you know, if you've got someone that's a good mover, make them move. If someone's a good visualizer, have them seeing things. And it's about knowing which way to take those people to give. And this is the most important thing, entertaining show. Because if people see an entertaining show, they're going to enjoy it. They're going to feel positive about that experience. And then when somebody asks them about something, they'll go, have you tried hypnosis? I saw a hypnotist the other week at the theatre in Newcastle. Absolutely amazing show. Really weird red hair, but great guy. If you can make them do that,
then sure, it help you quit.
Yeah, absolutely for them. 100% with you there, Grant. That's absolutely brilliantly put. And so did that answer?
Yeah, but for me, I wasn't particularly keen on watching stage hypnosis before I learned it, and I don't know. It's just weird. I don't know whether I would get. I saw Paul McKenna in Cardiff just literally before lockdown last year, and because I understood what he was doing, that sort of like dulled the entertainment value for me, if that makes sense.
You've been behind the curtains, Sally. You kind of know some of the mechanics, whereas the average person watching, for them it's fascinating, you know, seeing that transformation in front of them. So maybe you've got a bit too much knowledge there. I've got a confession to make. I actually went to a Paul McKenna and pretended to be hypnotized just so I could get a close-up view as to what was happening. And it was fascinating. It was fascinating. That was in Hemel Hempstead about, I don't know, like 20 odd years ago. But again, that kind of fascination with hypnosis didn't come from hypnotherapy. It came from watching stage hypnotists, and that led to a fascination for hypnotherapy. So, you know, for me, I think absolutely stage hypnotherapy. What I said, someone else called it stage hypnotherapy. I would say Tony Robbins is really the only person I've seen do stage hypnotherapy. It's stage hypnotism is for, entertainment. Hypnotherapy is for, kind of personal change. But for me, I think stage hypnotism helps hypnotherapists a lot. And in my experience, those clinical hypnotherapists that don't like stage hypnotists, for me, tend to lack congruency. They tend to lack belief in their own abilities. And I think perhaps at some level there might be a bit of resentment there, that because they wouldn't have the confidence or courage to get up on stage and risk failing in front of a public audience. There is no audience other than the client in a therapy room. So in front of an audience, I've got a huge amount of respect for stage hypnotists, because there's you're on the high wire without a safety net. You've got some tricks up your sleeve to kind of mitigate certain things, but effectively there's nowhere to hide if you do a bad performance. So from my point of view, that's why it's such a powerful convincer strategy. And personally, that's why I love doing group hypnotherapy sessions, because I probably get a little bit of a taste of what you guys get, in the sense that you're involving many people at the same time, and it's still that magical experience. I would say there's an element of stage hypnotism. If you've got a room of people, lifelong arachnophobes, and they say, oh yeah, it won't work on me, and at the end of it, they're holding a massive tarantula, there's probably similarities there in a stage hypnosis show, where equally they've done something unbelievable that they didn't think that they would do. So, for me, I think it's really beneficial, so long as, I would say Grant and Rob probably have got strong opinions on this. The British tabloids love to demonize a hypnotist. They love to kind of have these kind of scare stories. And for me, that's more of an issue. I would say, is the media a help or hindrance to hypnotherapy? Definitely they're a hindrance in the mainstream, even though I get a lot of coverage myself. But it's particularly their reporting of stage hypnosis, because they love the shock. They love that kind of controversy. I don't know if you guys got any opinions on that.
I think
it's... Sorry, go on.
Go on, Rob.
I think that's true, and I think that's true of everything. I think everything on earth is made worse by areas of the media that get a kick and massive money basically out of obviously demonizing whatever it is they possibly can. So I think that's definitely true. And I think one of the major things is that as long as a stage hypnotist has somebody leave the room with a positive opinion of what hypnosis is, as long as they leave with a positive experience, I think a lot of hypnotherapists who, again, might demonize stage hypnotists, they probably think that the public see it as very different things. They just don't. I think the public, generally speaking, because they don't have the experience or the education, or they haven't dived into it much, or even probably seen very much of it, they keep us completely apart. One of the questions, Grant might see this as well, when we get interviewed for the press, I almost always get asked what's the difference between a stage hypnotist and a hypnotherapist. And I think it just echoes the fact that most of the general public just don't know the answer to that question. So for us, it's just, is it the same thing? Are there any differences? They don't know how it works. And I think there's more similarities between stage and therapy than most people would want to, than most hypnotherapists, lots of hypnotherapists would want to admit. So yeah, I think for me, it's all about creating a positive experience of hypnosis as a whole. So when people leave, they feel like they had a good time, whether they got hypnotized or not. They leave having had a good time with a smile on their face. And I think stage hypnosis, out of all forms of entertainment, is probably one of the longest lasting. It's one of the best value forms of entertainment, because it goes on all the way home. Like if you went to see Elton John, you'd have a lovely time and you'd sort of talk about it every now and then at a Christmas do for the rest of time. But with a stage hypnosis show, that conversation is still happening 3 days later, 4 days later, 5 days later, very strongly going on. So stage hypnosis is a really good value form of entertainment for that reason, because it's something that goes home with every member of the audience for that reason. Oh, do you remember when he did this and when she said that? So that's really powerful. So when people leave with that positive feeling about hypnosis, generally, they don't go home and go, oh, but that's only stage hypnosis. I'll have to go and investigate hypnotherapy differently. They don't care. It's just hypnosis. Hypnosis was good. And so I think that can only be positive.
Don't get me wrong. I have a greater appreciation for stage hypnosis now, having learned hypnosis myself. That I think it's more that it's a minority of people that's what they say. That's what they have in their mind. That it's for entertainment and not for therapy. But it's my job then to, I guess, not persuade, but for a good case for it. It being different, it being good. So I have a greater appreciation of the skills that and yeah, I agree. It's the confidence that you guys have in doing that is, second to none. So
I want to jump on a little bit there. In fact, sorry, you say about confidence.
Where does that confidence come from? Now, many people on here have heard me say for many years, since we started this, that for many years, 4 years, in fact, I started reading about hypnosis. I started trying to hypnotize people. And it wasn't until 4 years of my whole journey until I actually hypnotized someone. Now, I use something called the seesaw induction. I don't know if anyone knows the seesaw induction. Now, obviously, Rob, who's on the panel, created the seesaw induction. And it was something that resonated with me, and it worked. And then from there, that was literally, I call the seesaw induction my Pringles cap, because it went and then it allowed me many different things. At the same time, as I've also mentioned on this platform, what happened from one person 2 minutes later or 5 minutes later didn't work for another person, because I had to refine things and understand how people were thinking in order to be able to achieve hypnosis. The way I spoke, the things that I said, and all this as well. So when it comes to confidence, it's not necessarily about the confidence. If you can hypnotize someone in a therapy room, you can hypnotize someone on a stage. Now, that said as well, what Grant said before, you have to be entertaining. You have to be able to find a way to find quick-witted jokes. You have to be able to use innuendos. You have to be able to take risk. And risk can also, as Rob said before, be very good publicity, or it can be very bad publicity. And for me, where it complemented my magic, where everything else happened, I was able to push out these shows to the military very, very quickly, and be able to make a name for myself, which made me infamous. Really did make me infamous within the cell where I was, because people wanted to see more of what I was doing, to the point where I could literally, I've had people ask me to hypnotize them. I've just clicked my fingers and they went into hypnosis. And I was like, how the fuck does that happen? How did that happen? But because literally the aura of everything that was around me was able to achieve that. So like I say, Sally, just all you have to do is believe that you can do something. And that is 100% the key. And Grant, I can see you nodding away. Rob, I can see you nodding away as well. So if there's anything there you want to add to that, either of you, please do jump up and say so.
I think you're right, but I think as a stage hypnotist, it's a baptism of fire. Why a lot of people don't succeed or have much longevity within stage hypnosis is because anything that can happen happens, and no matter how much you plan for it, there's always something that will catch you off guard. And after you've been performing for a while, done a lot of shows, your confidence comes from your ability to deal with those challenges and those situations
with confidence. And I think
having confidence on stage, exactly the same as having confidence with that person that's sat in front of you, that they're going into hypnosis whichever way possible, but they're going in. I think confidence by itself, you've got to have some ritual, you've got to have some expectation, some belief. That razzle dazzle, I think, is one of the things that makes hypnosis work really well. When you go and see Rob's show, and it's like I don't know what the tag is, but the world's most outrageous hypnotist. You're going to see an outrageous show. The expectation is there. You're going to have a good time. They see the show posters, the lights, the atmospheres that sit down in the theatre. All of that is a suggestion in and of itself.
Yeah. I think for me, I was lucky. My confidence on stage came from absolute naivety. I was 16 when I did my first show, and I'd sort of studied it for 2 years, never hypnotized anyone. Sort of physically practiced the motions of how doing a fallback induction, that kind of thing, but never actually hypnotized anybody. But I had this sort of balls to the wall mentality. I sent out letters to like 20-ish pubs around the northeast of England and offered them a free show. I figured if it doesn't work, they haven't paid me anything, and if it does, that's fine. And it's funny, I only sent them to pubs that did live entertainment. So I researched to see who had singers and stuff on. And of the 20 letters I sent out offering a free show, they were like old style direct response sales letters. I think I only got 3 bookings out of it. It was a free thing. Anyway, I went and did the 3 of them. And luckily they went really well. But I think the confidence to do it in the first place, as I said, for me, just came out of blind naivety. And I wish that was a gift I could just from being young. I wish that's a gift I could give to everybody, because obviously I was lucky enough to start out that young, but most people are older than that. And by that point, the world has had its effects and taken its toll on people and kicked the shit out of some people. And I think if we could all just have that naivety to just have a go and know that it's probably going to be all right, and it might not be, and if it isn't, well, that's all right, because you'll do it the next time. And I think what Grant said as before about this baptism of fire thing, with everything in life, you've really got to push through the difficult bits. And it's quite, it's hard to remember what it's like being on stage after a pandemic for 16 months, but like the last tour I did, we had 2 horrendous shows. They were awful shows. And any hypnotist who says they don't have a bad show every now and then, because every comedian has a bad show, every singer has a bad show, every band has a bad show. With them, it's less obvious. It's really obvious with a hypnotist, because we have nothing to fall back on. We've got no safety net. And so it's more obvious. But yeah, I think any hypnotist who said they haven't had a bad show, they don't have a bad show every now and then, either hasn't done enough or is lying. And I think you have to be. I know loads of people who've quit just because they had a bad show early on and they hated that feeling. Now, I don't enjoy that feeling, but I'm just willing to push through it because I know that 99.9% of the time it's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. And it
really does take a point to be able to get past and be able to, and in some cases that's why I haven't done shows, because I've moved to different locations. I was infamous in that one location, so going to somewhere else and setting up again, that setting up is much grander, and being able to jump into that location to be able to do something. John, we've had you up on stage for a little while, but we haven't asked you your question yet. Would you like to share with everyone?
Yeah, thanks for inviting me up. I'd love to share my story. I think I'll start by saying I'm probably a closet stage hypnotist, to be honest. I'm excited by the whole concept of it, but I'm also terrified by the whole concept of it, really, and I'm sure everybody is to start with. I first got involved. Well, my first experience with this kind of thing was Paul McKenna, probably 30 odd years ago, when he used to do some West End shows in London. And then rolling forward about 5 or 6 years, I think I've told a couple of you guys, I've probably heard this story before, but I had a bungee jumping tower on Chelsea Bridge. And Paul McKenna, by this time, had a TV show. And he used to bring his filming crew to my bungee tower, which was equivalent to a 30-story building. And he would use that as the metaphor for people that were scared of heights. Now, because obviously they'd set up all the filming there, they would also do the people that were scared of spiders, etc., anxieties and all those other things. So I got to see the back office of McKenna at work, and he was working in those days with a fella called something Breen. It might have been Michael Breen or something.
It was Michael Breen.
And,
yeah.
Was it Michael Breen? Because I've tried to find him since, out of interest, just to hook up with him, and I could never find him. I think he was a Canadian guy, wasn't he? Does that ring a bell?
I know that his company used to be McKenna Breen for the training, and then he kind of ditched that and then started aligning with Bandler afterwards. But yeah, it was Michael Michael Breen and Paul McKenna for a long time. Yeah.
And anyway, and I saw the back office, and I was obviously very enthusiastic, thought it was incredibly powerful, relatively simple for how powerful it was. And it was McKenna who said to us, look, really, you guys are hypnotists. And knowing what I know now, having done a few courses, we were, of course, nobody's going to jump off your 300-foot tower unless you've got rapport and trust, and you're taking them into an altered state, because all your bodily senses are telling you that you shouldn't be throwing yourself at terra firma from that kind of height, and if it did go horribly wrong, it really was going to be game over. So we took a lot of pride in the fact that we could get people through a terrifying experience, and that was what we were selling. The mind over matter of being able to well, in their version, they were cheating death. Obviously, we didn't see it as quite such a lottery. We took a lot of precautions, as you would expect as professionals, and luckily, we only sold return tickets for the whole of our time. So and we've probably jumped over 100,000 people in the UK over the last 30 odd years now, and that's been a lot of fun. So rolling that forward, I live in Portugal nowadays in the Algarve, and my daughter was needle phobic, so I couldn't find a hypnotist to work with her. And because I'd Googled it, it came up in my news feeds that there was in Portugal an English course which took was a weekend a month for a year, and I went and did the course and qualified as a clinical hypnotherapist, and haven't done a whole lot of it since. I do friends and family and a few people commercially. But I'm intrigued by the whole stage hypnotism thing. I'm not a shy person. I can see myself getting up there. But I suppose if I analyse it and listening to you guys all speak, it's exactly my problem. I'm terrified of the bad show in the early days. I get that if you're going to do shows on an ongoing basis, of course you're going to have a bad show, and I could cope with that. But I also feel that a bad show early on would probably weaken my confidence extremely. You know what I mean? And I guess that's my experience of it, really. So I'm intrigued by all the comments that you made. Unfortunately for me, the lad who taught me hypnosis here in the Algarve, at the time I was impressed by what he did. I then went on to do an online course with Mike Mandel and Chris, whatever Chris's surname is, Chris Thompson, and I found their course, head and shoulders above the course that I'd taken here. But all part of the journey. I don't regret the course I took here. I just found something that was more suitable to my style of my requirements, really. And the clinical hypnotherapy stuff I've done, I've had pretty much 100% success rate. But I haven't done a lot of it. It's not a day in, day out thing for me. One every couple of weeks is roughly where I am with it. And love every minute of it. But the stage stuff does intrigue me. I have no idea what it could generate in terms of monetary rules. So that would interest me if anyone wants to volunteer that. If not, perhaps send me a DM as to what sort of money can be generated from it. But yeah, so that's where I am, really. Any advice you could give me that would get me over that hurdle of the group induction and just getting started from that perspective. Audience size, what's the minimum size audience you would recommend working with to have enough of a footfall to be able to get some target market going?
John, I want to ask you a question. When you very first started off with your bungee jumps, how did you used to entice people? How did you used to entice people to take up your bungee jumps?
How did I entice people? Well,
did you used to market it? Did you used to, literally stand out on streets and add people into there? How did you used to talk to people in order to jump off a so high crane, whatever it was, with a little bit of string attached to their ankles?
It's a very good question, and it's one that has intrigued me forever, because if I could have found something that had a similar appeal to bungee jumping. I mean, we've done, as I say, we've done a lot of it. It's been a very kind business to us. When I started it, I thought this is a cash grab for a couple of years while we find a proper job. And here we are 30 years later. We still run the UK Bungee Club. I don't get involved in it hands-on anymore. I own 50% of it, and it ticks away. We still, other than lockdown, we're still jumping circa 15,000 people a year. It raises an absolute fortune for charity. So we entice people to link with the charities, because then everybody wins. The person jumps for free. The charity pick up the balance, and we get another jumper. And of course, if you've enticed someone to jump for charity, what do? They ring all their friends and family and tell them what they're going to do, and consequently we pick up other jumpers. So the whole thing becomes self-perpetuating. I think with the bungee, it was definitely. And people often used to say to me, "Oh, I do it for me. I do it for a challenge." Utter rubbish is the truth on that. If you had a bungee jump in the middle of the desert and nobody was watching, nobody go and jump off it. It's all about bravado. And the way that we marketed it, and successfully marketed it, it was all about a challenge. If you're in a pub and you challenge someone, could you do a bungee jump? People don't, it's predominantly young guys, average age probably 23. Young guys don't want to say no. And especially if your mate says, well, I'll do it if you do it. And before you know it, you've got 10 of that group coming to do a bungee jump. So we had people going out, hawking around pubs, and we linked with the charities very, very early on. And we made a successful business out of being a quality operator that charities could trust. So they did a lot of the marketing for us, and then it starts to self-perpetuate. And of course, after we've been doing it for 8 or 9 years, the internet became prevalent, and consequently that was a much easier way to get to the masses than it was putting up posters and knocking doors in pubs.
Cool.
Grant, Rob, have you got anything you'd like to add? Grant, I can see you're unmuted.
Yeah, well, I was going to say I did the 300-foot bungee jump in Trafford Park. For exactly that reason. I think it was a young girl that tried to sell me tickets for it, and so I went for it. But it's the same thing. It's people want to know, can I tick that box? Will it happen to me? Can I experience something new? It's the same people that go and see a stage hypnosis show sometimes. They're fascinated whether it can happen to them and whether they can be hypnotized. And they're the people that volunteer for exactly the same thing. People want to experience life.
Yeah. I think in terms of getting going from where you are, for me, it's about MVP, as with everything in any form of business at all. Get the minimum viable product version of your show together. That means you can go and do, and put all of the pressure and onus on getting an audience on somebody else's shoulders. So don't try and do your own show. Loads of people I've come across did their first ever show by doing it themselves, like hiring a hall somewhere, selling tickets, trying to pull everything together. And I mean, doing a hypnosis show is hard enough without having to also figure out how you sell tickets for it. So I think for me, it would be find somebody who's already got an audience, a venue of some description. Like I did just pubs in the northeast of England, because that's where I live. And yeah, do the minimum version of the show that you possibly can, and just pull something together and have a go. Have a voiceover introduction recorded. You'll have contacts for all of those things. Get it done, make it happen, and just go out there and let somebody else take care of that. Eventually, I've now transitioned into the point where most of my shows are done myself. So we work with venues and sell tickets and all of that. And Grant's done a ton of that as well, and he'll tell you it's hard. So I just get more of a kick out of doing it. So the reward from that hard work is worth it for me. But I think to get going, find the minimum viable version of what you want to do. Find somebody who's got an audience, a venue of some description, and just be aware in terms of financially. Stage hypnosis, I think, is probably divided in two. For a bunch of people, it's incredibly lucrative, and for a bunch of people, they could probably fit everything they earn in a year down the back of a sofa. And that entirely comes down, truthfully, to what they charge. So I know when I got started in this, a really well-known stage hypnotist who's been doing this for a long time gave me some advice. And bear in mind, this is 17 years ago. And he said, don't go out for less. If it's a pub and it's around the corner and it's a mile away from your house, don't go out for less than 250, 350 quid. And nobody really was then. Nobody was going out for less than that. But I mean, now you can book a stage hypnotist if you look around a little bit for 100 quid, 150 quid to come and do a show, and sometimes they'll drive quite a long way to get there. So I think it just comes down to there's a massive market. I decided a long time ago I just wanted to put my price up to be higher than most. And there's a huge market of people who will pay for that. I've just booked my first gig in 16 months after the pandemic, and it's a hen do on the 16th of June or the 9th of June, July or something. I mean, and it's 16 women on a hen do, but they're paying my fee. And I think if you look at the market that exists in the world, there's always a market for cheap and cheerful, and there's always a market for expensive. So just put yourself in the expensive lot. You'll be fine.
Absolutely. And cost always passes a subconscious message either way about how it can work. And I've heard from both Rob and Grant about that before. I'm aware of time. Jessica, I see you've just come up. Would you like to ask your question?
Yes. Hello, everybody. Good evening. I was listening to what John was saying about that moving from clinical hypnotherapy into stage hypnosis, and creating that confidence, overcoming those nerves, and how do we begin? And then obviously I was just listening to Rob's advice. And from my perspective, I understand what it's like to feel those nerves. I can liken it to fighting, because there's nothing more nerve-wracking than having to step in the ring against another human being who wants to knock you out. Except maybe the idea of getting on stage and hypnotizing someone and it failing. I'm sat here right now and I'm thinking, I matched a fight in September. If you told me I had to go on stage and hypnotize someone, I think I'd pick walking into that ring. So there must be a step before going on stage where you can practice. So in the kickboxing world, that's sparring, where you take a few punches, it doesn't always go your way, but you're not actually on stage in front of an audience. And I was wondering if any of you know of any ways that we can practice I don't know, do hypnotists meet up and practice, or performers meet up and practice on each other or in audiences before they perform to the public?
Rob, I've seen you on mute first, so I'm sure you're dying to go for this one.
I mean, yes. So hypnotists do meet up and practice on each other. I have to admit, I think it's fucking
weird.
So I don't do it. No offense to the people who do it. But the problem with it is it's sort of like it's a bit of a, excuse the expression, but it's a bit of a circle jerk in that you want it to work when you're hypnotizing somebody else, and therefore you're just naturally going to be more hypnotizable to them. And I think so. It absolutely happens. But I think it tends to be more of a hobbyist thing. Like people turn up, and it's either in some circles it's a hobbyist thing, and in some circles I've heard of it's a kink thing. So in either respect, I don't think it's a particularly productive way to do it. One thing that I did in the early days is there's our local college, South Tyneside College. I went to their performing arts department. I sort of knew the lecturer there. And so you got a bunch of people who were all like 17, 18. And I just came along and said, look, can I just practice the ropes? I don't actually want to hypnotize anybody. I just want to rehearse the theatrics of the show. Because the truth is, I think that hypnosis on stage is 99% about the performance and 1% about the hypnosis, maybe 90-10, but probably more like 95 or 99-1. And I think that actually the bit that you really want to practice is making sure that you know your script, you know what routines you're going to do, in what order, you know what props you're going to need to have on hand and when. If you're going to run your sound from some sort of remote control thing, then you want to do that. If you're going to have somebody else do that, you want to, I think the logistics of putting on a show are actually more important than practicing the hypnosis bit. I think the best way to practice hypnosis is to get out and do a show. But what you can do in order, because what you said there is, I think, it's a really good point about the fear that you would have from doing a stage hypnosis show for the first time. And I think actually what I really like, I'm going to pick up on what I think your exact words were, which was basically the fear of having to hypnotize someone in front of a room of people and potentially fail. I think you've got to remember, and this is well buried in theatrics, but we massively stack the odds in our favor because we have an audience of 50, 100, 200, 500, 1,000 people, and we only need 3 of them to put on a fairly decent show. Obviously you want more than that, but if you were absolutely pushed, you could get 3 people. You could pull I've done it. You could pull a show out of 1 person if you absolutely had to. It's hard, but you can do it. So I think with the odds are massively stacked in our favor in a way that feels unusual. And you're always going to be sending people back. And you can also then fill the show with stuff that allows it. So for example, I think Grant probably does this as well, but I do. I position the fact in advance that I'm going to be sending a bunch of people back down to the audience. And that's going to happen by my choosing, because as you said earlier, tonight isn't their night. And I think the minute you set that up, the fact that you don't hypnotize all the people or a bunch of them now go back to the audience during the induction process is no longer you failing. That's you fulfilling the thing you said you were going to do at the start of the show. So I think with everything you have stacked in your favor in advance, the fact that you've got all the theatrics of it, you've got this sound system, you've got an audience, you've sold tickets or the pub sold tickets or whatever. I think all of that stuff that happens really stacks the odds in your favor. And actually there's not a lot to be frightened of. And if you put the more emphasis, I think in a therapy room, I'm not a hypnotherapist, but I would guess you put quite a lot of emphasis on the hypnosis bit. On stage, I really don't. I just go through the motions and put all of my effort on being totally present and a really good performer, because that's what I know is going to sell it both to the volunteers and to the audience. So yeah, I don't think there's much point in rehearsing the hypnosis bit, just in my opinion, but I'm biased because I didn't. I think you should do everything you possibly can to rehearse the performance part and then let the hypnosis bit happen.
Yeah, thank you. That makes a lot of sense. And what you said about practicing on other hypnotists, it doesn't sit very well with me either. And I've just been thinking it all through, and it's that doing it on stage in front of an audience. So the step before doing that is going to pubs, going to places, I don't know, in my scenario, maybe gyms or something, and hypnotizing individual people, individual small groups, and just starting to piece together who would I invite on stage if I was doing a performance. And then what you said about the amateur dramatics and the other circles of performers, magicians are a good one, because like my best friend's a magician, and it's learning the performance side of it, because I know the hypnosis in the therapeutic setting, and now I just have to overcome that. Well, how do I turn this into a performance? Yeah.
one of the things, sorry, Grant, just one of the things I want to point out to you there is when you said about going to bars and stuff, you've got to take that chance. You've just got to go out there and got to say, hello, everyone, I'm a hypnotist. I'm going to demonstrate something. Now, one of two things will happen. It'll work or it won't work. Now, obviously, this comes down to your pre-talk. It comes down to multiple factors. If it's nerves and things as well. But if you genuinely believe that it's going to work, you'll find a way of being able to make it work. Now, obviously, I know Rob with his magic side and Grant as well with pure demonstration side, you will always be able to find that way and words of being able to assist something to be able to work around you. Now, magic obviously naturally helps hypnosis because you can show something prior, which then on the tail end, you can say, I'm also a hypnotist and else goes and works there. But never, ever just question who would be the best. Just go out there and test the water. You will survive. You'll sink, whichever way it is, and then from there you will learn. And Grant, actually, I'll prefer it to you because you was about to say something. But if you agree or disagree.
I agree, but what I would say is make it easy on for yourself. I mean, you're already a hypnotherapist. You want to promote your hypnotherapy business. Go to business networking meetings, stand up, do your pitch, talk up, do a demonstration, hypnotize some people, get up there, and any chance you get to speak and demonstrate hypnosis, turn that into a performance. You know, and business networking events, everyone's nice anyway. You're not going into a venue where people are drunk and they're going to start causing you problems. Business networking events, Women's Institute talks, Freemasons talks, it's where you can kind of cross over and promote your hypnotherapy business as well as doing a entertaining demonstration of hypnosis. That will naturally grow into a performance of hypnosis if that's what you're wanting to do. If you're wanting to be an entertainer that does hypnosis, then that's another way to do it. If you're wanting to do a stage show in order to promote you as a hypnotist in order to get more clients, I would definitely stick more to that side of things.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Can I just ask another quick question? So what would be a minimum audience size you would target to make a decent show? How long would you expect the show to last as a minimum, we'll say?
Well, I was going to say, I think the length of the show is very much determined by the amount of volunteers that you've got. You can have a very entertaining show, like Rob said, with one person. But if you've got one person in a show and you're hammering them for an hour, that person's going to be mentally exhausted. That's not what you want to do. You want to keep that demonstration as short as possible. The smallest number, I think the smallest show I've ever done was for a party of 6, and that was a challenge. I've had shit shows with 1,500 people in an audience, and I've had great shows with 15 people in the audience. The myth is it's just a numbers game. The reality is it's not. It's about putting, like Rob says, stacking everything in your favor, every suggestion, everything they see, think, feel, experience is all pushing them towards being a great hypnotic subject.
I think because in the early days, you want to make it you do want to make it a bit more of a numbers game. So I know when I first started out, I was nervous. If I had to do a show for less than 100 people, I was nervous. I was like, oh, that's the numbers are not quite in my favor now. I think but like everything, what drums that out of you is just having to do it. So when I first I did 4 summer seasons in Cox when I was 18, 19, 20, and 21. And at the very start of the season where there's hardly any flights and there's hardly any tourists, the problem there is if you don't do a show, you don't get paid. Like there's no contract, it's all cash in hand. It's just you've just got to do a show to get paid. And so I would go out in front of whatever they gave me. So sometimes I'd go out and there were 12, 15 people in the audience, and you've just got to make it work. And sometimes you end up with more people on stage than you have in the audience, and it's awkward. The atmosphere is not brilliant, but I think you just get more confident the more you do it. So this gig I've got in next month, which is again for 16 women on a hen do, there's loads of hypnotists would turn that down because that's a terrifyingly low number. And all you've got to do in that instance is to step the odds in your favor by it. So it's all booked through an agent, but I've gone back and said, let's just make sure that they know that somebody's going to have to take part. I don't want to get there and have this awkward, difficult conversation when nobody wants to volunteer and nobody wants to take part, or one person wants to volunteer. I get there and they push somebody in front of me and say, go on, go on, Becky, you're going to do it. So I think it's just about setting expectations. So in the early days, I wouldn't want to do a show for less than like 100 people. If you can possibly avoid it, 50 to 100 people is a safe number. Because you've got to remember, it's not just about how many people you can hypnotize. It's about how many people are actually going to get up in the first place to be hypnotized. So, and that's completely out of your control.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, well, I always remember the old going saying is if you had a room of 100 people, typically you get chairs of about 12 people and then go from there. You may get more people standing up behind, but you'll always get the odd person who's going to just jack around and piss about, which could create different flows too as well. But unfortunately, we've already gone past 10 o'clock, which is where we're going to talk to. First of all, I want to thank Grant and Rob for coming up today to challenge all the questions and everything that's come up, and it's been absolutely brilliant. But I think it's only right to summarize as well. Is stage hypnosis a help or a hindrance? I believe personally it's a help because it can make people believe things that they never ever thought was possible. Now, there is always going to be a hindrance because there's going to be some people who say bullshit, X, Y, Z. But I think the percentage wise, it's going to be far minimal on the hindrance side than the help. And it goes back to what Rob said before and what Grant backed up of the fact of always having them people coming up to you going, can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? Can you help me with the other? And also from what Grant said as well, is being able to demonstrate them hypnotic expenses in a therapy room in order to take someone to that next level. Adam, you're even better than me at summarizing stuff. So have you got, and I know you've been absorbing everything in the way that you do every single week. I'm sure you can finalize this even better than how I can.
I mean, the thing that's coming to my mind is this idea of the baptism of fire. And there's two incidents that it kind of resonates with me. The first time I did group hypnotherapy for a room full of phobics, I hadn't ever cured a single phobic, but I just had this absolute conviction that I was going to be absolutely fine. And I think you need that congruency, you need that self-belief, you need that conviction. That seems to map across with the overall attitude of stage hypnotists. And when I did group hypnotherapy, when I'm speaking on stage and there's 50, 100 people, you have to have that absolute belief that it's going to go the way that you want it. My overall take on today, definitely that stage hypnotism is a help for hypnotherapy. But my belief is that the majority of stage hypnotists would actually make very good therapists, but not all therapists would make good stage hypnotists. And I think that if you can have that confidence, you can have that skill set, you can think on your feet. There isn't a stage hypnotist around that's going to be relying on a script to do a stage hypnosis show. They're going to be calibrating the audience they're working with, the participants nonstop. That's what makes a good hypnotherapist, is working with the person in front of you or the people if you've got more than one. So my take on it is that it's good for the industry. And the only bad thing is if you've got shit stage hypnotists, but indeed, if you've got shit hypnotherapists, that's bad for the industry as well. So overall, I think this has been a fascinating conversation. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Grant. Thank you for the people that have come up and spoken on stage, and to you in the audience as well. Really appreciate your time. And thanks for joining us.
100%. 100%. At the top of the page here, you've got a Hypnosis Rooms with the green house there. If you click it, you'll see what we're going to talk about next week. And if you press the bell, you'll be able to join us and it'll get a little notification. But most importantly, thank you for joining us, and especially to our special guests, Grant and Rob. It's been really good to have you on board and be able to talk these different variables of everything to do with stage hypnosis and everything too. So everyone, I really thank you for joining us this evening. Please join us again next week, 9 o'clock, and we'll be talking even more about different stuff to do with hypnosis. Thank you very much. Take care.
Cheers.